Broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for being with us today. Somebody please just type in the question box how the volume is. Can you hear me all right? All good? Yes, no? That's coming through. Yes, Norbert's on the ball, of course. Wonderful. And Janet, oh, good. All the Canadians, the Canucks, and Daryl over in Mossman, and Thomas, and oh, great, thanks. Well, you can all hear me. Thomas say, greetings from the true north, just received 15 centimetres of fresh snow and enjoying minus 30-degree temps. Let's get your trading going, Thomas. You'll be able to leave that place and find somewhere a bit warmer. Anyway, good evening to you. Good morning to our friends in Australia and across the ditch. To Adrian from Adelaide. Dean's with us. And President Donald Trump. Yeah, good on you. Okay, so let's see who's here. Lovely to have you here. First webinar of 2020, folks, of course. Amir, nice to have you with us. Andrew, Ben, Bill, Chase, my smoking nemesis. This is a smoke-free webinar, Chase, thanks to you. Daryl, Dean, Janet, of course. Jeff, he's doing, I got your email, Jeff. We'll set up something for you next week. The other Jeff, I think, if I'm not mistaken, let me see, the new Jeff is the one that I have to say a particular greeting to. Jeff's in Iowa. He's a farmer. He grows soybean, corn, and other things. And I think he's going to be doing a Daniel Code tutorial shortly. I'll send you an email about when I can give you a call to have a talk, Jeff, and I'll look forward to meeting you. That'll be grand. John's with us. Justin down in the Hunter, still waiting on that email from you. Your dad is at least, Justin. Do give him my apologies. I will get it done. Michael Pell, haven't seen you for a while. Michael's a lovely guy. We met him in New Zealand for a webinar some years ago. Murph, hope you're still trading well. You're overdue for a catch-up and a chat with us, Murph. Mr. Deck, of course, over in UK. Norbert up in Canada. Peter, Philip, Thomas, and Trevor. Lovely to have you with us, all the usuals. So, folks, today we're going to talk to you a little bit about moon cycles and delve into them a little bit more. So let's get the show on the road. And here we are. So, as you know, markets are rational, orderly, sometimes predictable, and you're going to see a fair bit more of that today as we move along. I'm just going to divert for a moment, if I may, because I know a lot of you personally. Some of you have been with us for many years. We've just completed 11 years of the Daniel Code website back in December last year. Some of you have been with us for many, many years. Others I've met at tutorials, and still others I've spent a lot of time with you doing video tutorials, so I feel like I know you. And we're a very small business, and really the Daniel Code's really a bit of a family. So I wanted to share some family news with you, which is coming up now. And here we are. So let's see what's happened. Here we are. So this is the young lady with the ringlets and the graduation mortarboard on. That is my daughter, Bodhi. And you can see when this photo was taken, she's a bit of a star. She does a few photo shoots for Bond University. This is the Bond University website. And she was graduating with a psychology degree. Well, she's 25, just turned 25. She's finished a psychology degree years ago. She then did honours in psychology, as she had first-class honours, and she then did her PhD, a doctorate of philosophy by research, which is the highest educational academic qualification you can have. And I'm happy to tell you she's finished that. She finished that in late November. It's gone off to the examiners, but it's all been signed off by the university, so that should just be a fairly straightforward procedure, and we would expect that that will come through in the next 8 to 10 weeks, at which case she will have her PhD, and she'll be Dr. Bodie. I thought that was very cool, a great achievement, a lot of work. It's tough to do a PhD. In those 3 years she's been doing it, she's also been acting as a tutor for students at Bond University, and also lecturing at Bond University. So having what's a thesis, David? It's a mouthful. I can't remember it offhand, but it's to do with anxiety and let me get my head around this. Anxiety and how it affects the cortex and the subconscious, and what are the triggers for it. Very, very complex stuff. Anyway, so I was thrilled to hear she'd finished her thesis, and thought, well, that's great. She can get a full-time job as a lecturer now at the university or any other university. And she's been getting paid some money, but once you get your PhD, of course, you go up the payment scale very, very substantially. So that was exciting for Dad, but then, of course, it all changed. The news is now that she got a scholarship to do, got a federal government scholarship to do her PhD, and she's now decided she's going to do medicine. And believe it or not, she's got a federal government scholarship for medicine as well. So she's leaving us on Monday to go to Sydney, which is probably 12, 13 hours driving south of us here. It's the capital of the biggest state in Australia, New South Wales, and she's got a scholarship to study medicine at Notre Dame University in Sydney. So we've been running around getting... it could become a politician. I wanted to become a politician, David. I like that. I tell both my kids that's the best job in the world, go into politics. Anyway, so we're losing Bodie. She's off to Sydney for 4 years doing medicine. And once her PhD comes through, when the examiners have signed off on it, which shouldn't be long, she'll be Dr. Bodie. And as Mrs. Needham says, in 4 years' time, once she's finished her medicine, we'll be having to call her Doctor. So anyway, look, I thought I'd just share that with you. Big changes in the Needham household, but there we are. Okay, so let's get back to the serious business of work and making money. Thomas, thank you, and David, and Norbert, all of you. I'll pass on. Your congratulations to her from all of you. Thank you, guys. So we're going to talk about the magic of time cycles and the magic of markets. This is a little fresher for those of you who didn't. Thanks, Janet. Those of you who weren't with us at the last more recent webinar we did in December, but the major time cycles are mainly solar. Within that solar system, the cycles, there are 6 sub-cycles. This is showing you the relationship between time and price, and those same relationships also apply, of course, to trading, because some of the observable habits of the solar system have a very strong effect on trading. This is a chart of the S&P. It's a bit hard to see the dots on them, but they're full moons and new moons. And we've known for a long time that markets are affected by new moons and full moons, and the cycles in between in particular. It used to be, many years ago, that you could almost set your clock by the S&P turning on full moons, but since it's become public and a lot more people know about it, that's shifted, and what it really turns on now are the Daniel Code ratios, the half and the 59% of the lunar cycles. If you're really interested in this stuff, get yourself an ephemeris, which is what they call the book that sets out all the detail of the planets. The best one is published by NASA Jet Laboratory, but a lot of that stuff, of course, is available on the web free of charge anyway. But so we've got the Earth rotating around the Sun, and we've got the Moon rotating around the Earth. And like the Earth's orbit around the Sun, which is elliptical, it's not perfectly spherical, it's the same with the Moon. It has an elliptical orbit around the Earth. And that orbit, at various times, it comes closer to us, and at other times it gets furthest away from us. And when the Moon is as far away as it can go from the Earth during its cycle, that's called an apogee, and you can see the picture of the Moon here. It's considerably smaller, the image that you get from it. The opposite of that is the perigee, which is the time at which the Moon is at the nearest point to the Earth in its rotational cycle. And if you think about this, I'm going to show you just how important the gravitational force of the Moon is, which we see as tides. And if you I used to teach this stuff in tutorials. I'd say to people, pick up two buckets of water, just normal garden buckets, fill them up with water, try and hold one in your left hand and one in your right hand out sideways, completely horizontal, see how long you can last. And you can't last long because water is actually quite heavy. It weighs about 10 pounds a gallon, and it's pretty heavy stuff. So then when you realize that sort of level, and the weight, of course, is the Earth's gravitation, but there's also a gravitational pull provided by the Moon, and it's those swings in the position of the Moon relative to the Earth that creates the tides. And when you understand how heavy it is to pick up a bucket of water, think about the power that's necessary to lift an ocean up 20, 30, 40. Some places we'll see in Canada, the tide actually rises over 50 feet. Quite extraordinary. We see that on a regular basis up in North Queensland, just along the coast north from where I am. At Mackay, the tide rises and falls 26 to 30 feet. It's quite it's quite extraordinary. And there we are. So this is a chart that I've actually shown you before. This is just a reminder for you to show you apogees and perigees on the S&P chart. This effect of the Moon's gravitational pull is valid on all markets, but it's more easily observable, if you like, in the S&P and in silver in particular. So just have you look over this. I mean, the important low at the end of December 2018, that came right on a perigee. The next high up at the beginning of May 2019 came right on an apogee. All of the subsequent highs, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of them, came at or very near apogees or perigees. The low came on a perigee, up to an apogee, down to an apogee, etc., etc. So these cycles are real, and it's worth thinking about them and understanding them. This is just exactly the same chart. But what we've done now is, instead of just simply looking at where the apogees and perigees are falling, we're taking them as starting points in time cycles. And if you think about how this gravitational pull works, the Moon is left its apogee and it's going along its cycle, but it's coming towards the Earth. It's coming closer and closer and closer to the Earth until that moment when it's at the closest point in its orbit that it ever gets to, and then that's immediately turned, and the next day it's actually going away, and the gravitational pull is weakening. So that's what happens at a perigee, and that point where the rotation, the movement, the distance of the Moon from the Earth changes at that key point. It's coming in, it's getting closer and closer and closer, bang, immediately it hits perigee, and it's now going further away from the Earth. Well, it's not really, but it's doing that by virtue of the fact that it has a rotational cycle that's a sphere. And of course, the Earth is also rotating around the Sun and taking the Moon with it, so that's why you get this sort of 50-minute a day offset in time between the true circular cycle and the elliptical cycle. But simply by starting to put the Daniel code, the main Daniel code time cycles, 44, 59, 62, and 70, the heathen cycle, putting them on a chart and just starting from an apogee, look what you get. You get the important low in March, either side of it, one either way, and then you get 1 day past the high that came after that low. So time cycles are valid for, generally speaking, plus or minus 1 day. And that's because it's valid to start your time counts from either a bar high low or the close. And often enough, you'll have a closing high or a closing low that's not the bar high low. So that's why most of the Daniel code cycles in general, we say they're valid for plus or minus 1 day. So this next slide is showing you, I assume it's changed. Let me have a look of the view here. And yes, it has. And this is just telling you how the Moon works on ocean tides. And it's very, very interesting, all of this stuff. The illustrations on the next slide, incidentally, to show you. But if you think that the tidal effect of the Moon on Earth is more than twice as strong as that of the Sun, even though the Sun's gravitational pull on Earth is around 178 times stronger, that's because of the difference in distance. But that's pretty extraordinary when you think about it. We all accept gravity. We know what gravity is, what it does. And we know that we have magnetic, or we have forces that are created by the Moon and the Sun. Let's see if I can find our little dotches down here. Here we are. Must be in here somewhere. There it is. So that's sort of what happens on tides, as you can see. When the Moon is in line with the Sun, leading to our planet, that's where you get the extreme high tides. And at that stage, of course, you get the extreme low tides when the other parts of the Earth are furthest away from the Sun. And as this rotation of the Moon around the Earth is moving around, so that's exactly what moves the tides. Excuse me, the average tidal range is around 3 feet in mid-ocean, but if you look at what this happens on the coastal areas, the Bay of Fundy in Canada, I know a number of you are Canadians, we have a lot of Canadian clients, the difference between low tide and high tide can be up to 53 feet. Extraordinary, isn't it? The highest tide in the US can reach 40 feet. In Australia, about 30, 35 feet. I mean, it is just a very, very big deal, particularly if you're a yachty or spend any time around the ocean. You know how important tides are. It wouldn't be the first time that I have left my yacht, Sidewinder, in the days when I had it and used to spend a good part of my life sailing. I left it at the jetty at Bundaberg up on the north coast of Queensland, on the way to Hamilton Island for the regattas up in the Coral Sea Islands. And I went ashore. I had a friend that wanted to see me, and we'd been sailing all night and a bit longer, and I was pretty tired, so I went and saw this friend and had a meal with him, and lay down on his couch and had a snooze for about 4 hours. By the time we got back to the boat, there she was sitting on a keel, not quite high and dry, but amazing just what those tidal inflows and outflows are. But anyway, and then there are subtleties within that which are not terribly important, but the greatest difference between high and low tide happens around the new moon and the full moon. That's important because it's this issue that it's the biggest switch between incoming and outgoing, between the moon coming to us and moving away, which it doesn't do figuratively, but that's the net effect of the way that the orbits of the Earth and the moon interplay. The full moon, when you see this happening at the closest point to Earth, called Perigee, this is when you get the super moon, and people get very excited about that stuff. It's all very beautiful, of course. And the opposite happens when the full or new moon is around the furthest away from the Earth, the apogee. But the effect of the gravitational pull created by the moon makes tides. We know that, and we observe that. We all accept that. But it doesn't stop at the ocean shore. That gravitational pull moves across the Earth in exactly the same way, and we call these air tides. And air tides are not visible, but they're just as real. And I've already told you the story, but for those who are new to us, many years ago when I was trading very short-term charts, like 3-minute bars or 3-tick bars even, it was pretty frantic. But I actually had some surveyors go and try and get me the exact center of the floor at the New York Stock Exchange, because of course with futures, when we're trading S&P, for example, we're actually trading the value of the 500 stocks on the New York Stock Exchange that are in the S&P index. Similarly for the Dow, the Russell, and the NASDAQ. So I wanted to know what the exact center of the trading floor was, and of course we couldn't get that. They got kicked out pretty quickly. But they got me the coordinates right down to seconds on the front steps of the New York Stock Exchange, and I then worked out the difference in time. It's very minuscule, between the New York Battery, which is the nearest tidal station to the New York Stock Exchange, and the floor of the New York Stock Exchange, and I allowed for that variation. Excuse me. Morning hay fever. I allowed for that variation with this short-term trading, and it was quite spectacular. Those of you who are into that sort of thing, get a tidal chart and have a look at it all for yourself. Anyway, let's move on. Today I wanted to talk to you about gold and silver, particularly silver. Gold is highly correlated to silver, so the more you understand about silver, the better you'll be able to trade gold. And this is just simply all the Apogees and Perigees for 2019. And just on its own, it's pretty nice. If you start looking at it left to right, you get a couple of highs. You get the Perigee high and a few lows down there, and off it goes. You get a big counter trend high in right at the end of June, another one in July. You get the high at the beginning of August. And you don't get the September high, the biggest one on there, but you get the low, and then up it goes, down it goes. So you can see that it's very useful to know when these Apogees and Perigees are going to fit. Now, Apogees and Perigees, like time itself, vary, and they can vary. They're known to have varied by up to 3 days. So if you have a look, you'll come to that slide as we go along, but if you look at each of these Apogees and Perigees, excuse me, and you say, we can expect a turn within 3 days of an Apogee or a Perigee, that's knowledge that others don't have, that you do have. So let's take a closer look at that. This is the same chart. This is the daily chart of silver. I've just blown up what you were looking at on the last bit of chart so you can see it more clearly. And the same thing, you can see where the Apogees and the Perigees are coinciding with turns in the market. Not all of them, but more than one would expect. You've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Leave out the last one, it hasn't quite arrived yet. There's 11 Apogees and Perigees on the chart. And you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 maybe 7.5 if you stretch it, important market turn. So there's something in this thing, but what is it? Let's have a look a bit further. Well, like everything in life and in trading in particular, whatever is obvious doesn't work for long, because the rats and mice get hold of it, and they make a big deal out of it, and it stops working. And that's why gold and silver now work on the 50 and 59% of the moon cycles even better, much better actually, than they do on the obvious ones, the new moon and the full moon. But all we've done here is we've taken the Daniel Code time tool, which those of you who have the TO3 Plus subscription should have access to, or do have access to, and we've just simply started by clicking on the first perigee we come to on this chart, which is sometime in early September. And you can see from that the 44 has given us a low, the 59 has given us nothing, but the 62 has got right on the high where we got the reversal that stopped that rally. You move on to the 70, that's a big outside bar. It's a bit hard to see with the apogee on top of it, but that's around December the 19th. That's a big outside bar that kills that rally entirely. So that's interesting, isn't it? By just putting the Daniel Code ratios on and starting from a perigee or apogee, we're starting to see all sorts of things. Now what I've done is I've moved the Daniel Code time tool up, and it's now running off the late September apogee, and you can see now the 44 is 1 day off the late November low. The 59's given you that high that ends the rally up. That's the big outside bar down. The 62, 3 days later, has given you the low that runs all the way up to the big high on Wednesday, and that all starts from a Daniel Code time cycle, which you can see there. This is more of the same. I've just taken the Daniel Code tool, the blue line that you can see towards the left-hand side. That's where it's starting from. I've moved that onto a perigee, and you look across the chart now, you can see the 44 just gave us a little minor cycle pullback of 1 bar after it. The 59 gave us nothing. The 62 gave us a short-term high that led to 2 inside bars and a down bar. But look at the 70. It's nailed Wednesday's big key reversal bar, full of the drama. That was, of course, you'll all remember that, with markets got fearful of war plans, war talk. The media, again, as usual, but then got hugely relieved when Trump issued the all's clear. And gold and silver reacted just opposite. To equities, it went roaring up at the thought of war or more enhanced difficulties, more extreme difficulties with the Iranians, and then it collapsed when that appeared not to be the case. But you can see there in these last 3 charts, simply by running the standard Daniel Code time cycles, you've got this tool, you just click on it, click on the apogee or perigee, and off it goes. Now remember, apogees and perigees can fall on weekends, and we don't have weekends in the chart. Many years ago, I actually had a program that printed out all of these charts. They went, it had a feeder of paper, and it just went on and on and on, like you could print out 50 feet of it if you wanted to. And that one allowed me to put in all the blank days for holidays and weekends. And so that way I was able to get the apogees and perigees exactly on the day they landed. In fact, if you get an ephemeris, you can do that quite easily. And you'll just see this even that little bit more accurate. It's amazing stuff, isn't it? Look at that. Okay, so this is, I think we've done that one. I think that was the one we just did. No, this is another one. We've moved on to the next apogee, and you can see that gives us the high Wednesday's high and kickback reversal, snapback reversal. We had that before on the 70. Look, now we've got it on the 62. Do you remember when we were looking at those charts of the S&P with the big drama it had in February last year? I was showing you how these time cycles, once you found the right place to start, they just go on and on and on, and using every high and low as you come to it, you could find those huge dramatic turns we had in the pullback and drama with the S&P in February last year. And it was like we would find it on the 70. Then the next cycle, you'd find the same bar on 62 or the same bar on 59. And that's what's happening here. We found this big Wednesday dramatic day, which has given us the high of this rally. We found that originally on the 70. Now, just using exactly the same tool and exactly the same technique, we've just moved from using a perigee to an apogee, the next one. Here you are. You've got exactly that same bar on the 52. This is it here, right here. It's a bit hard to see. It's got the blue line right over the top of it. Extraordinary, isn't it? So the time it takes for the moon to travel from perigee to perigee, it's called the animalistic month. And we've had a few animalistics on our website over the years, but thankfully they're pretty much all been weeded out long ago. What a wonderful word, animalistic month. And that's an animalistic month is the time it takes for the moon to travel from perigee to perigee. But the time between apogees and perigees is not constant. It varies slightly due to the effects of the sun and moon's orbit. Don't forget, you've got the moon's orbit around the Earth. We've got the Earth's orbit around the sun, which is dragging the moon with it. But have a look. We know that the average of an animalistic month is 27.5 days. But back in 2015, 2016, the lunar perigee there affected itself in 24.5 months. Days, I should say, 24.5 days gave you the animalistic month for that period. But that's 3 days shorter than we would normally expect. So time itself is like that. 1 hour is not exactly the same as the next hour. We assume it all is, but it's not. And the distance is so small that it's not noticeable. But each hour, as time goes through the day and the weeks and the years, each hour is slightly different, and the same with these cycles. And these have been known to vary by 3 days. Well, that's a pretty extreme example, but if you said to yourself plus or minus 2 days, you'd still be in a very, very high degree of accuracy with what's happening with these markets. So these are the more subtle moon cycles. This isn't the new moon, full moon cycles. So you can see that the animalistic month, the average is 27.5 days. We know it can vary. We're going to allow for that. The Daniel Code definition of market time is 29.6 days. And the other one is 26. Let me just find my documents here. Make it clear. Some of you haven't heard this stuff before, so just bear with me for a short moment. I'll come to it. I'll come to it later on. A basic Daniel Code time is 59.3 is times, and our normal iteration of time is 29.6 days. There's also an alternate for that, but just work on that for the moment. Interestingly enough, that is almost exactly the same as the definition of a synodic month. And a synodic month is the average length of a solar month, if you like. January, February, March, April, May. All of those months, you can have lunar months as well, if you like. But the synodic month, the average time for each month, we know some are longer, some are shorter, depending on where the sun is in its movement. Well, it doesn't move around the Earth moves around, but it appears that the effect is if the sun moves from one Tropic of Cancer to the Tropic of Capricorn, across the equator and back in its annual journey. So a synodic month, the average length per month, is 29.5 days. And interestingly, the Daniel Code definition of market time, which doesn't come from anything, it actually, we get that from the Bible. And we've had that for years and years. Those of you who've done a tutorial know exactly how that's calculated. Those of you who haven't done a tutorial and would like to know how it's calculated, go to the Daniel Code website, click on the tab at the top that says Articles, and you'll find there's a, it's not a video, it's a sound recording of a part of a tutorial I did many years ago, probably 6, 7, 8 years ago, 7 years I think, at Colorado Springs in Colorado, and it's called Live at the Springs. And if you want to listen to that, you'll see where this number for the Daniel Code time comes from, and it that actually comes from the book of Daniel, written about 600 and something BC, where these wonderful figures we have now that are so precise, it's because we have also, amongst other things, the atomic clock, which was first installed in Paris in 1954. But we then, because we're traders, we have to deal with market holidays, we have to deal with weekends, and the average trading month has 22 days. That's what an average trading month is. So if we think of 29.6 as a Daniel Code month, or 27.5 as an animalistic month that can vary plus or minus 3, we finish up with using the Daniel Code as the average, the length of a synodic month. That's the best measure, and we know that within that, on average, there'll be 22 days, 22 trading days within that. So we can then use 22 as a substitute for the 29.6. In other words, we can say, let's do the same thing. Let's go to our Apogees and Perigees chart, and let's put on it the 22-day time cycles. And of course, if we're interested in 22, we must be interested in 11, which is an half, and we must also be interested in 44, which is twice. This is not the Daniel Code time cycle. This is an adaptation, very much an approximation, I should say, to a trading chart. But nevertheless, when we get time, we get it with the imprimatur that it shall be for a time, times, and an half. And it's the same with all of these numbers. If we're going to use 22 as a proxy, as for a trading month instead of a calendar month, we must use an half, and time is 22, becomes a measure of time, not the measure. If it's a measure of time, then we should also be concerned with time, times, and an half. We should be interested in 44 and also an 11, which is an half. See what happens when we just take this simple measure of 22 and the half, which means we're breaking this up into 11-day cycles, and we start from a perigee. Look what happened. 44 days, we get that very, very important high in September. That was a fourth seal high. Beautiful. As we move along, we get the next high, counter trend high. Let me get my tool so I can show you what I'm talking about a bit more easily. So this is the fourth seal high. This was the high that, the important high in there for the year. And then next, this was the next counter trend high. We're in a downtrend through here. Counter trend high 1 day off the actual bar. There's just a 1 day counter trend low off this cycle. Nothing much off this cycle. Here we are 2 days off the high from the last cycle. The next one, we're up to 99 now, gives us the perigee right on the high, which stops that rally for 3 days. and then the next one at 110 gives us the low, which starts this big rally all the way up to Wednesday. Pretty important rally. The 121 gave us nothing, just a continuation, and this 132, that it's hard to see because it's gone over, but that's Wednesday's bar, which was a real biggie. And we're getting that by simply taking the minor, the more subtle cycles from the moon that are not generally understood by folks, and that's allowing us to do that. Let's move on. So this is the same thing, believe it or not. I'll just refresh your mind. This one started from the Perigee, the Perigee Apogee, the Perigee, I should say, back in July 2019. All we've done is we've moved that up to the next cycle. This is starting from the Apogee. Look what you've got now. We had this important high before, and it was off the, here it is, off the 44 cycle. Now we've got exactly the same high off the 33 cycle. But now we've got this minor cycle high, the low, most important, this low here. That was a fourth seal low. It came at the 99-day cycle, and that's what ran all the way up to Wednesday's high. So you can see that the Apogees and the Perigees themselves are giving you reversals. Not all the time, but it's a better than an average probability. In fact, it's a reasonably high probability. Have a look at it. There's a high, there's a high, there's a high, there's a low, there's a low, there's most important high. This is a 1-bar counter trend high. This is a low into the high. This is an important low. It's hard to see on this chart. That is a low. That's a fourth seal low. 4 or 5 bars later, they get the Perigee high. Right down in the misses this Apogee low here just by a couple of days, gets the next high perfectly, gets the next low, the most important low, in late December right here, and that's what starts this massive, great big run up. So all of these things are just happening not by happenstance but by mathematics, because these are the cycles, the observable cycles. I'm not talking about Mars or Jupiter, and I certainly don't want to know if Mars is retrograde. I mean, I've heard enough about that stuff. If you believe in that stuff, well, good on you. I don't, because I can't measure it. And my view is if I can't measure it, it's not real, to me at least. But as we've gone through these last 2 charts, this is the third one, we've now moved on to the next Perigee. Exactly the same, haven't changed. We're still running on the 22 days and the 11-day half cycles, and here we are now. We've got the September low. We know we had the high. This is the important low, straight up into an Apogee, down into a fourth seal low in time, back up to the fourth seal high. We know this is an important low here, and as we work along, that's a counter trend high. This is a nothing. And this is nothing significant here. But we started to put these things I've talked to you about, I'm putting them on the chart as we go through. So if you look at the same chart now, there you are. It's still got the Apogees and Perigees on it, but what we've done is we've added the various highs and lows that have come out of using a 22-day cycle. That is an average trading month. We've used that in place of the animalistic cycle, and if you looked at this chart and said, well, you pretty well got every high and every low that mattered. There's a couple that it hasn't got, but boy, it's got the vast majority, hasn't it? It's missed this high here. We don't have anything for this high, but it's got that high, that low, this little low here that starts the big run up into this high. This Perigee just gave us a 1-bar counter trend. There's the big high 1 day before that. Here's your 1-day counter trend, comes on the Apogee. There's the low. That's a fourth seal low after a Perigee. Up into an Apogee, down. There's nothing really on that low there. Then the next high is on a Perigee. and this is the fourth seal high that we got 22 days from the apogee, or an extension of 22 days. Here's now getting your fourth seal low there. That's a high, that's a high, that's a low, and that's the big B high up there. And I don't know what this apogee here is, perhaps it's support. But if you look at that chart, that's taking us for the last 6 months of 2019. It's pretty well found every high and every low simply by using these more subtle time cycles that most people don't see. And I think that's pretty exciting. And if you have a look at what happened with gold on Wednesday, remember, silver and gold excuse me, are so highly correlated that a signal in one is executable in any other, so long as the trade is elected. In other words, if we have a buy or a sell signal for silver, you can execute it in gold. If we have it in gold, you can execute it in silver. If we have a signal in the Huey, gold Huey, we can't actually trade the Huey. It's an index. It's the index of the 25 largest non-hedged gold producers in the world. That's the 25 largest mines that don't hedge their future output. And they form the Huey index, $HUI. But that is a complete proxy for both gold and silver. So if we look at this big drama that took place on Wednesday, which has ended, at least for the moment, this fantastic rally up that gold has been having, you can see that it came right at a Daniel Code blue line, which is at 1614, 1614. Just let me get the other chart up here so I can tell you exactly what that meant. So that was the actual high of Wednesday was 1613.3. The Daniel Code blue line was at 1614.0. So that's 7 ticks variance, that's all. And in a number where that market was, say, 1614, you've actually got 16,140 ticks in that number, because in gold, there are 10 ticks in every point. And we're talking about a variance of 7 ticks out of 16,140%. That's 0.04%. Not 0.4, it's 0.04%. And we allow 0.1% variance generally. So very, very, very accurate. I'm just also taking a quick look at the silver chart to show you, that I'll tell you exactly the same thing happened. The high of Wednesday came in silver at 1889.5 against the DC number at 1887, Daniel Code blue line. And of course, we had a TO3 sell signal for that day. So you had a sell signal, you had the Daniel Code price level, and if the markets are going to turn, they will turn at and only at these Daniel Code numbers. For those of you who haven't been with us long, I'll give you a quick look at the Daniel Code members chart so you can see what you get there. And then we had the sell signal as well. There was the blue line, and there we were, 29 days from the November new moon into the January the 8th high. And that was 29 days into that, and it was also time and a half using the alternate 26-day period, which we don't, it just gets confusing. But let's say we got the 29, the Daniel Code time cycle, the dominant time cycles. 29 is the first of them. The others are, as you know, we go along, 44, 59, 62, 74 is the heathen number. It's not actually in the Daniel Code sequencing, and it comes from a different part of the book of Daniel. So that was an absolute setup for gold, and it was pretty darn dramatic, wasn't it? And I did a post, as well as that, I should say, here's the fourth seal, Frank's fourth seal for this week, and you can see that this on the 24-day chart, the big long-term chart, there's a 44, a 59, a 62, and a 70 cycle, all expiring in this 24-day period. And this is what Frank had to say about gold in his analysis, which is posted every Monday. And he says, you can read all that. He's running the argument of whether it's a rally in a bear market or whether it's a bull market, which only really matter to people who have a longer-term view of things. And he does make the comment right at the end. Next week is a crucial week for gold. And so much is pretty much that's how it's turned out to be. So don't forget, those of you who are interested in longer-term analysis, Frank does that. And I'll just finish running through this slideshow, and then we'll have a look at those charts I wanted to show you. But New Year started, folks, and people are starting to think about learning how to trade. It's a marvelous gift. You know, the old saying, give a man some fish and it'll feed him. For a while, teach him how to fish, he can feed himself and his family and village forever. It is the most wonderful gift. I'm an attorney by profession, and I came to futures trading. I traded stocks for many, many years. My father was a great man for stocks and shares, but I came to futures trading about 26, 27 years ago with no background in trading really at all. And it's just been the most marvelous gift. The markets are there for you all the time. They pay the same money going up as they pay going down, which is the real trick to it. I mean, why in God's name people would be investing in stocks when they could trade futures? There must be a reason. There are all sorts of reasons. Most of them are societal, social reasons, because futures is seen as too risky, but it's not. If you know how to trade, I will teach you how to trade not only very successfully but safely and securely. So if you're thinking of enhancing your life and your income by becoming a trader, or indeed even if you want to become a pro trader, I've taken people who've never seen a chart before and made them into really top-class elite traders, and I can do it for you. Shoot me an email, please, jneedham @thedanielcode.com. Let me have your phone number and where you live, the time zone, so I'm not waking you up inadvertently in the middle of the night. And to excuse. And I'll be happy to talk to you about your trading. In fact, I'll have nothing better than talking about trading. And we had a tutorial here in November. Boy, it was fantastic at the Gold Coast. Wonderful, wonderful. Small crowd of people, 8 people there. It was absolutely fabulous, wonderful people. And 3 days really of just talking and living trading. It was great stuff. We can do that for you too by video. And in many ways, the video training has been better than the live trading. The live tutorials, I should say, because what happens in the live tutorials is always someone with a loud voice, which may or may not equate to any knowledge, but there's always someone who knows a bit, thinks they know a bit about trading. And the loud voice comes in at these live tutorials that I've done, and other people get drowned out. They get cowed. They don't want to raise their voice. They don't want to be out. They're embarrassed. It's ridiculous, but they are. So they don't ever really get that point. And then, excuse me, I move on, and they've never got that point, so they won't get the rest of the tutorial either. What I've done this time, I found the video tutorials where we go through things one-on-one with you on GoToMeeting, and we record everything so you can go back through those sessions as often as you like. And then I get you to paper trade a market, and we go back, we go through that, see, did you do that right? Was there a better way of doing it? Where were the difficulties? Where were the big losses? How do we deal with that? And we keep doing that till you're entirely proficient, and that most importantly, so that you've seen everything that can possibly happen to you in markets while you're paper trading and not risking real money. And that way, once you do start trading real money, your anxiety level goes up naturally. You've now got money at risk. We don't want you to have any emotions, except I want to burn into your head what the Daniel Code program is, so you can execute without fear or favor. And it's been hugely successful. So if you're interested in it, folks, this is a new year. Let me know. Drop me a email. We're starting to take bookings. And if you've already done a tutorial, talk to a friend about it. It's the most marvelous gift I can give to you, or you can give to anyone. If you haven't already had a free trial, folks, go ahead, go to the Daniel Code website, hit register, follow the prompts, and that will set you up. Any problems at all, contact Terry at support@thedanielcode.com. And if you haven't had a trial of Trade Navigator, with whom I'm a partner, we can organize a free trial to Trade Navigator charts and software for you as well. This is the compliance statement. I really do like you to be aware of compliance. I promise you, if you don't know how to trade, you can lose your money really, really fast. The old saying is 90% of traders will lose their bank in the first 90 days. I think 99% of traders lose their bank in the first 30 days. But if you don't know how to trade, for goodness sake, do not, I implore you, risk real money trying to trade. Put the time and effort into learning how to trade properly, and then you will find that the futures is a bountiful basket. It's there. It's like owning your own private oil well. You can just go and get some money anytime you want to, or all the time you want to. Both options are great. Okay, so let's get out of this, and let me show you the Daniel Code website, which will be around here somewhere. Let's go to our website. Bye-bye to Birdie. She's leaving on Monday. So let's have a look in the charts here. There was a stunning movement in one of these Forex charts the other day. This shows you what the charts are like, folks. These are there's 12 or 14 Forex charts, and about the same, a couple more future charts. So under here are all the Forex pairs. These are all updated on the weekend and on Wednesday night, and then we move on to our currency futures. Have a look at this. This is the big drama day in the S&P. Now, you know, this is a passionately mad outside bar where you say, oh, well, you know, that's just news. It might be news, but look where the low was. I'll bring this chart up on my other screen so I can show you exactly. But the low of that bar was, here it is. The low was 3181. There's the blue one, 3180.25. That's 3 ticks variance, not even a hair. And have a look where it closed with all the panic, the supposed panic about all this. The high was 3267.75. There's the blue line, 3268.50. That's 3 ticks variance. And look where it closed. 3260.75 is the Daniel Code number, and it closed at 3259.75, 4 ticks away. I mean, that's what these markets do all the time, and we don't talk enough about it. Let me show you. Here's gold, which we've been talking about. You've seen this bar. There's that high. 1614 was just a couple of ticks away from it. You can look at any one of these charts. Here's copper. This is updated after Wednesday. Look where this market turned, 276.25. There's the low in copper on Wednesday. Another big, supposedly emotional day. Ran down, reversed, key reversal bar. Stopped at the Daniel Code blue line. markets turn at and only at the Daniel Code blue lines, and they do that all the time. Here's crude oil. Let's see what it's got to offer for us. It had, the biggest, most emotional bar probably of all the markets, because think of a war or aggression that's going to cause disruption to the markets. That's the first thing to react. So this was supposedly a day absolutely full of emotion, oil roaring up on the talk of war, and then doing this massive key reversal outside bar when it turned out that things were pretty quiet. But look where that high is. 65.65 is the true high of that bar. The Daniel Code blue line that's been on there for weeks was at $65.60. Look where the low came. The true low of that bar is 59.15. Look at the Daniel Code lines. There's a red line at 59.19, 4 ticks away. There's a blue line at 59.14, 1 tick away. And as you go through the market, they all do this all the time. For any of you that have a knowledge of trading, the Daniel Code is the only tool that has measurable and known numbers in advance of where markets will turn. Can't tell you exactly which one it's going to turn on, but I can tell you that markets turn at and only at the Daniel Code numbers. So there we are. And that's pretty much it for today, folks. So let's see. Albert, thank you for your congratulations. I'll let Birdie know. And we've got Rob with us from New Zealand. Best for the new year. Now that's fascinating. Till next time, thanks again, John and Frank. I'll pass that on to him, mate, and thank you. I hope you're well. And Jeff, the Idaho farmer, I'll be talking to you probably tomorrow, Jeff. We'll look forward to having a chat. Glad you enjoyed it. Adrian, you too. Thank you, folks, for being with us today. I hope you enjoyed it. All knowledge is great. If you know something that the rest of the world doesn't know, you're just that much better equipped to profit from it. So thank you, folks. Those sending their congratulations to Bodie, I will pass it on from each of you and appreciate it. Thank you, Murph. Thank you, Janet. And Tom, happy to have you with us, my friend, from Florida. Happy New Year to you too, my friend. All the best, guys. Bye-bye for now.